For decades, dermatologists pretty much told us it was a myth, right? That the chocolate bar you devoured last night had absolutely nothing to do with that new pimple on your chin this morning. But what if that was wrong? What if the science is finally catching up to what so many of us have suspected all along? Today, we're going to dig into the really surprising and now scientifically backed connection between the food on your plate and the skin on your face. First things first, if you've ever dealt with acne, just know this. You are not alone, not even close. A whopping 80% of people between the ages of 11 and 30 will experience it. I mean, it's practically a rite of passage, but that definitely doesn't make it any less frustrating to deal with. And the impact goes so much deeper than just your skin. It's not just a vanity thing. As the Cleveland Clinic points out here, it can take a serious toll on your mental health. It messes with your self-esteem, your confidence. So figuring out the why behind it, that's the first, absolutely crucial step. Okay, so let's get into it. How does a pimple actually form? What is going on under the surface of your skin that leads to that unwelcome red spot? Let's break down the science. At its most basic level, acne is kind of like a tiny traffic jam happening inside your pores. That's really all it is. It's what happens when those little openings get plugged up with a mix of oil, dead skin cells, and bacteria. It really all boils down to a simple 3-step process. First, for various reasons, your glands start producing way too much of an oil called sebum. Step 2, all that extra oil starts mixing with dead skin cells, and together they form a plug that clogs up the pore. And finally, bacteria that just love this oily, clogged-up environment start to multiply, and your body's immune system jumps in to fight back. And that is what causes that classic red, swollen, and sometimes painful inflammation. And here's a great visual of what's happening. On the left, you see a nice, clear, healthy pore. But on the right, that's the result of that 3-step process we just talked about. Deep in the skin, that pore gets clogged, oil gets trapped, bacteria have a party, and boom, you've got an inflamed pimple. Now, for years, and I mean decades, the official stance from most dermatologists was that diet had absolutely nothing to do with this process. But now? Well, now the science is telling a very, very different story. This quote from a dermatologist really says it all, doesn't it? The entire diet doesn't matter belief system was built on a super shaky foundation, just a couple of old, badly designed studies from over 30 years ago. It basically became medical dogma based on some really flawed data. So the big question is, what changed? What was the new evidence that was so powerful it could actually turn this long-held belief completely on its head? Well, it started with a groundbreaking study out of RMIT University in Australia. Researchers there decided to put this old belief to the test once and for all. And frankly, the results they found were nothing short of stunning. So here's what they did. They took a group of young men who all had acne and split them into 2 groups. Group 1 ate a pretty typical Western diet. Lots of processed foods, white bread, sugary stuff. The other group, though, was put on a high-protein, low-glycemic index diet. That just means foods that don't spike your blood sugar, like lean meats, fresh vegetables, and whole grains. The results were honestly mind-blowing. After only 12 weeks, the group on that healthier, low-GI diet saw their acne get better by more than 50%. This wasn't just some tiny, insignificant change. This was the kind of concrete evidence that could finally bust that old myth wide open. So as you can imagine, this study opened the floodgates. Researchers all over started looking way more closely at specific foods. So which ones are now officially under the microscope for their potential connection to breakouts? Well, 4 main categories just keep popping up again and again in the research. We're talking about refined carbs and sugars, certain dairy products, whey protein supplements, the kinds you find in protein shakes, and, of course, classic fast food. So why do these specific foods seem to cause problems? Well, with things like refined carbs and sugar, it really all comes down to insulin. When you eat those foods, your blood sugar shoots up and your body releases a flood of insulin to handle it. The problem is that rush of insulin can then signal your oil glands to go into overdrive and even make your skin cells grow faster, basically creating the perfect storm for a breakout. Dairy is a little more complicated, but the theory behind it is pretty similar. Some studies suggest that milk products can also raise insulin levels, along with another hormone called IGF-1, which stands for insulin-like growth factor. And just like the name suggests, it acts a lot like insulin, potentially kicking that acne-forming process into gear. And then you have whey protein, which is a go-to for so many people who work out. Well, check this out. A pretty recent study from 2022 found a major link. Whey protein use was almost twice as common among people with acne compared to people with clear skin. The correlation is really strong, and it probably comes back to those same hormonal pathways we've been talking about.
All right, that's enough about what to avoid. Let's completely flip the script. What foods can you actually add to your diet to actively support clearer, healthier skin from the inside out?
The research is pointing to a diet that's packed with anti-inflammatory and nutrient-dense foods. We're talking things like omega-3 fatty acids from salmon and walnuts to help fight inflammation, tons of antioxidants from berries and leafy greens, probiotics for a healthy gut, and even the compounds in green tea. And, of course, making lean proteins and those low glycemic carbs the foundation of your plate is key. And look, making these changes doesn't mean you have to do a complete, miserable diet overhaul overnight. It can be all about making simple, smart swaps. Like this table shows, maybe you try switching from a whey protein shake to one made with pea protein. Or instead of that sugary breakfast cereal, you have some oatmeal. Every little change can help lower the overall hormonal impact of your diet and support your skin.
So here's where we'll leave it. Now look, diet isn't a magic bullet that's going to work for absolutely everyone. But the science is finally clear on this. The connection is real. And for a lot of people, taking a good, hard look at what's on their plate could be the single most powerful first step on their journey to clearer skin.